Okay, students, today we are going to discuss about chapter 4, that is pastoralism in modern world. Pastoralism kan ti chuan ranrual enkol tu te ania an ran ten tlat tur ei tur an nei nam huna pianga an pem kwal mai thin ani ram lua nget an nei lem lo ani. Okay, here we generally use nomads. Then who are nomads? Nomads are people who travel from one place to another. They don't stay at fixed places, okay? They don't fix themselves to a particular region. So these attitudes of the nomads of moving from one place to another place brought a spatial significance for them, okay? But very rarely we find their places in the pages of this history. Why? Do they don't have importance in the history? Are their life not so important for us? Okay, in this chapter we are going to discuss about the nomads, how did their life go, and the impacts of their life with the British colonial system, and how is it in India, and how is it in Africa. So here we will try to explore their conditions and what conditions did they face and what are the effects of the British colonialism. Um, all this we will discuss here, okay? And let's go to page 51, pastoralism as a way of life, okay? Pastoral nomads and their movements. We already mentioned that nomads are people who travel from one place to another, okay, isn't it? And then do they travel alone? No, they travel with their herds, their cattle, sheep, and goods, and carry some foods for their cattle, isn't it? And so in order to get the foods for their cattle, they move from one place to another in search of these pastures, okay? And let's see their technology. Okay. These pastoralist groups use their domesticated animals, okay, especially for transportations. In addition to their own human muscle power, and this settled society use other sources of energy like this coal, hydropower, and fossil fuels. Their animal was useful in every field. It served as a source of food, also produce energy for them and when it is required, okay? And let's go to this economy bar in real bol na lampang kakan enliang. The pastoral groups have to make sure that the resources are available over a long distance. They generally transport bulk commodities like this salt as well as valuable goods such as these precious stones and mugs, and these pastoral groups also continued some hunting gathering practice and produce meat, milk, hide, and wool from their animals, okay? And at one time, these pastoral groups made exchange with the goods produced by the peasants communities, okay? And at time, the peasant society allowed these pastoralist groups to graze their livestock on fallow fields and in return for their manure, okay? And let's go to these social organizations. Within the pastoral social groups, the division of labor is quite limited. It is based on age, sex, and leadership quality, okay? And the elements of this private property are not well developed, means private property ka omlawani. Anmat khati hun lai kan. Nomadic groups are relatively egalitarian. Egalitarian means people are treated equally during those periods, and the community promote cooperation and solidarity within the groups. And on the other hand, these modern peasants as well as industrial societies are marked by these notions of this private property, and therefore the different notions of this property prevalent among the pastoralists also leads to problems and conflicts during their interactions with other communities. Okay, community dang ne na inbiak po na enge sumdo na ten emo mo thil chi sang sang indoor ton na ne khanin nge problems boy na conflicts te po chuak ve chen ani because of this. Okay, and then we go to the next, that is ideology. Pastoral societies regarded themselves inseparable from nature, and therefore they are in a positions to dominate it. Okay, and this absence of long attachment to any particular localities shapes their ideologies, which is generally against the attributing sacred values to living creatures. And we go to these different forms of pastoralism. There are two types of this pastoralism. They are nomadism and transhumance. Okay, and now let's see this nomadism. Nomadism is a kind of life in which a community has no permanent settlement. Okay, mun nget ramlua nget an nei lo ani chu, but move from one place to another, usually seasonally and within a defined territories. Okay, and next we go to this transhuman. As season movements of man and animals between different grazing grounds, they follow a cyclical patterns of migrations that usually takes them to cool highlands valley in summer and warmer lowland valleys in winter. And these transhuman pastoralists are normally less dependent on their animals for food as compared to the nomads. Okay, nomads ho ka chuanin an ran enkol mo an ran vulte akhananin ngat hle anin ngat eme mama se transhuman te chu an ran enkol akhananin ngat lutuk lova an mani po hi sumdom na lampang te po an khoi ve thin ani mo an sumdong thin ve bok ani chu. Let's go to this modern form of pastoralism, page 53. Another form of this pastoralist practice was ranchers. Okay, who are these ranchers? Ranchers are businessmen, sumdong, mo, who produce the commodities for international markets. They use what mechanized equipment man pokat changka ngani. Chak sumdon nan chak ten mga aeroplane te helicopter ten mga nito. And they engage in a large-scale livestock raising operations for the purpose of selling meats and wools. Okay, anni hi high risk taker anti hialani sumdong anni avangin zan khathil tu apo hausa thuthe mo zan khathil tu apo chat tlacherup the anni bokani mo chuwangin anni hi high risk taker anti ni. And let's go to colonialism, modern states and pastoralism. Okay, page 54. Under colonial rule and the life of the pastoralists changed completely. Their grazing grounds became less. Their movements were regulated. The revenues they had to pay was increased, and their trade and crafts and agricultural produce declined. This colonial administration shows the pastoral land as a wasteland, and they say that it is needed to be cultivated. Therefore, the forests were demarked as protected and reserved. Okay, and they completely restricted the movement of this pastoralist group. Andu dantan inka British ho kanin mo inge forest kanin dan mo anron siama chuan andu dantan ama chuanin pastoralist ho kanin andu dan tanin kami ram chunga khanin an inge thingten la a ti chuan an ranten tlatir mai thina ma se khang zong zong kha British sawinan ron opnu khanin everything was restricted, okay? And these colonial administrations completely disturbed the life of these pastoralists, okay? And more amounts of these taxes were imposed to increase their revenue income. Chia pek te ngai ta an chia pek tur te kan lan san zui le ngala mo, and the life of these pastoralists has changed, completely changed, okay, during this period. And thus these pastoralist groups suffered heavily in these colonial administrations, okay? And let's see the effects of these colonial policies on the pastoralist. Some pastoral reduced the number of their cattle in their herds, and some discovered new pastures, and some bought lands and began to lead a settled life, and some poor peasants, they borrow money from this money to survive. In due course of time, they lost their cattle and sheep and become laborer, poor laborer, okay? And next we go to the case study of pastoral groups in Africa. The Khoi Khoi of South Africa. That is, you turn your book to page 56. The Khoi Khoi tribes of South Africa comprise a number of large family groups living within the same area and recognizing the authority of the chiefs. Okay, they have chiefs. Territorial boundaries were not very precisely defined, but each group claims rights to grazing areas, springs, and water hole within each area, and visitors from outside, they have to take permissions before they could make use of their resources, and all members of the group had the same rights within their area, though ownerships of this livestock and domestic equipment was private, okay? And however, these group structures among these Khoi Khoi were highly unstable. The limited political powers of these chiefs, growth and conflict among families, okay, this which sometimes lead to blood feud, okay? Buai na te families akanin buai na te lo chuak ve thina chang phei chuanin thisen in chuana hial te potleng ve thina ni. Oh, and changing environmental and economic conditions all combine to produce frequent frictions and consolidations of new groups around core lineage structures after this context with these Dutch colonies, and in the ensuing expansions of colonialism, many new groups broke away from these Khoi Khoi tribes, okay? And next we go to the case study of the pastoralist groups in India, that is the Gadis of Kangra. Okay, Gadis were the shepherds of this Himachal Pradesh. They move up and down basing on the climate exchange. Like in summer, they also they enter these Jammu regions, and the meadow were grown in the summer seasons, and where the snow started to melt down and ready for their hearts. And moving on to winter, they also moved down to the south in the low hills of the Shivaliks, okay? And their life was very pleasant during those period. But after the arrivals, let's say with the arrivals of this colonialism, the colonial state claims forest and west as state property. So it prepared the records of these rights and its framework. Since the forest had been made the state property, the Gadis were seen less important. They were reduced to the status of tenants who could graze only on the payments of fees to the proprietor of the states, okay? And the grazing dues charged by the states kept multiplying, and the increasing shortage of this pasture complicated the problems, and pressed by this shortage they had to move over a wider areas, attracting more taxes, and even the temporal rhymes of these pastoral activities was sought to be redefined by the states, okay? And these dates for the arrivals and the departures of their flocks in each place were specified, okay? Hunbi and siam sakani mo, and fines were imposed if they arrived too soon or delay their departures, okay? Okay, after the coming of the British, the life of these pastoralist groups has completely changed, okay? They suffered a lot, okay? And kati zong ka voina kan explain thei chuni se ti chuan in homework ka penon chewa note ka ron peng cheunga chapter 4 note chuan in note hi in notebook pa nga ya khan in lauziak thale vek anga de chuan in lo vai hat vek don nia. Oh, thank you all.